Hello, welcome back to the Buchla Easel tutorial series. Today we're dealing with the envelope generator. It's orange, which means that we're interested in things that are orange in the synthesizer. This is a very heavily color-coded synth. The envelope generator looks like it's an attack, sustain, decay envelope. That's what it says on the box. I prefer to think of it as an attack, hold, release generator, and we'll talk about why during this video. But what we really want to do is just see it in action. Everything that we've dealt with up until now has been static waves. I press a key on the keyboard and then it's going to carry on making that sound until it receives a new instruction, because there's nothing telling the note to stop playing. We need an envelope to do that. We connect the envelope to our amplifier by taking an output from it and plugging it in to the input of gate number 1. And so now we have an envelope based control over that amplifier. Every key I play on the keyboard triggers the envelope. Why is that? Because the envelope generator is set to trigger off the keyboard. Once it's triggered, as long as I hold the note down, we're going to hear a sound. Why is that? Because the envelope generator is in sustained mode. We're going to deal with all of these in greater depth shortly. As soon as I let the key go, the sound stops. Why is that? Because we've got no decay phase set on the envelope. So everything is described about the sound that we just heard by the envelope generator. Let's break each one of those functions down and deal with it in a little bit more detail. The first thing that we have is an attack phase. When you open a gate on an envelope, the attack phase specifies how long it's going to take until it reaches its maximum open state. At the moment, the attack phase is set to basically nothing. The envelope generator has its smallest values at the top for some bizarre reason. If I make the attack about 3 seconds long, let's see what that does to the sound. Now we hear it come in really gradually. Now here's an interesting thing. I'm going to do the same thing, but this time play the key on the keyboard really quickly. You hear exactly the same attack phase. You hear the whole 3 seconds of the attack phase. The difference is that as soon as the attack phase is finished, the sound disappears because I'm not holding the key down. And this is a really important thing to bear in mind about the envelope on this synthesizer. It's going to do whatever it wants to do once it's been told to start. So I've pressed that key and it says, okay, thanks very much. Now you leave it to me. It's going to go through its whole attack phase, its whole sustain phase, and its whole decay phase. Let's bring each of those in turn and hear that happen. If I make a nice long decay phase, again, I'm going to press a really quick note. So now we heard the attack phase and then we heard the decay phase. Finally, let's introduce a bit of sustain. So this is, once the attack phase is finished, how long do you want me to do something regardless of any other external factors? We're not talking about how long the human being is holding the key down for here. I'm going to press the key as short a time as I possibly can. So it held at maximum volume, as far as the envelope was concerned, for 3 seconds. Now I'm going to hold the key down. So I'm going to play the note and hold the key down. So because we're in sustained mode, that note is going to play for as long as I hold the key down. While the gate is open, while I tell the envelope not to enter its release phase, its decay phase, it's going to stay open. As soon as I let the key go, you're going to hear the 2 seconds of sustain phase get tagged onto the end of the sound. Here we go, 3, 2, 1. So the sustain phase gets tagged onto the end of the note off. Let's put it in transient mode and do all of that again. So this time I'm going to play a really, really quick note. Full attack phase, full sustain phase, full decay phase. Now I'm going to play the note and hold it down. Makes not a blind bit of difference that I'm holding the key down. You can see on the interface I'm still holding the key down as I'm talking to you now. It doesn't matter. In transient mode, there is no hold phase. There's no period of time when the gate can be held open by me. All we have is a specified set of time that the sustain will hold the gate open for arbitrarily. So if I set the sustain to 0, we're going to go up on the attack, immediately down on the decay, and we're done. It doesn't matter how long I hold the key down. Just like that. The third mode is called self, and this will basically cause the envelope to cycle around in a repeated mode. It's going to start, go through its sustain phase, go through its decay phase. The moment the decay phase is finished, it'll go back to the beginning and do it again. So with the settings that we currently have now, it's just going to go up and down and up and down. I make these faster. You end up creating a simple tremolo. That's an amplitude modulation at audible rate. If I increase the sustain phase, it's going to hold the gate open fully for a period of time. And if I give it some attack but nothing else, we're going to end up with a ramp. And obviously the other way round, kind of sawtooth shape. Now then, I'm talking about ramps and sawtooths. They're great things to use as modulation sources. So rather than applying all of these envelopes to the volume, how about we apply them to the oscillator instead and see if we can come up with some interesting effects. So I'm going to get us back to the position of having a default static single tone that's a fixed volume. We don't need that cable anymore. We're not applying the envelope to the amplifier. We're going to apply the envelope instead to the pitch of our complex oscillator. Here is our pitch slider, and just to the left of it is the pitch modulation input. Let's drop this in there, you can see it highlight. And now as I begin to increase this slider, introduce modulation into the pitch, you're going to hear it. We're currently still in the sawtooth mode, so you're hearing. Let's slow it down a little bit. By increasing the decay, making the decay last longer, so it's taking longer to get down to 0. And now that we've got this frankly annoying but useful sound, I can demonstrate one of the other features on the complex oscillator. If I flip the polarity, listen to what this does. Our default position is going to be like no modulation, and as we introduce modulation, we're going to decrease the pitch rather than increase it. And that's a little bit of a head mash. Don't forget, this is a decay envelope here. Normal way around. Inverted. So that's pitch modulation. What else can we do with an envelope? Let's try modulating the timbre instead. And I'm quite deliberately taking a different output each time. It really doesn't matter. They're all outputting the same signal, the same envelope. I'm going to plug this into our timbre modulation input. Get that going. And now start introducing modulation. And so you can hear the maximum modulation permitted by the envelope decaying down to 0. There's nothing stopping us having the envelope trigger both of those things at the same time. Let's flip the polarity. Start messing with the waves. Yummy. And however long this envelope is, that's how long it's going to do its thing for. Because we're in self mode. So let's have a review of what we've got at the moment. Don't forget, we've decoupled the envelope from the keyboard. So at the moment, the oscillator is just generating a constant tone, and it's then potentially being modulated by the envelope generator, sorry. So if I bring the tone back in, what does it sound like? It sounds static. Why is that? Because our envelope generator is currently in transient mode, which means whatever it was going to do has already been done. It does something once, start, finish, start, middle, end, done. It's transient. It's taking its triggers from the keyboard. So if I press a key on the keyboard, what's going to happen? It does its thing exactly once. We're negative polarity here, don't forget. I'll flip this back round to positive, make it a little bit less head bashing. Let's do another one. So pitch up, tiny little bit of attack sustain, and then decay down. Exactly once. So every time I press a key on the keyboard trigger fires the envelope generator. The envelope generator does its thing, and we're in transient mode, so once it's done, and it goes away. Let's have a look at a couple of the other options in the envelope generator. We've got this second option called Pulsar. Now, Pulsar is one of the modules of the synthesizer, and we'll deal with it separately in a different video. But for today's purposes, I'll just ask you to accept that the Pulsar is a module that generates a periodic pulse. Pretty simple. At the moment, you can see this yellow light. That's determining how often the pulse is firing. So if I turn our volume control back up, what do you think we're going to hear? Okay. If I slow the pulse down, so now you can see the light coming on less often. Now let's just have a very quick discussion about things being open and closed. If I set this pulsar rattling at kind of infinite speed, so it's triggering faster than you could possibly count, what do you think that's going to sound like? Sounds like a constant tone. What's basically happening there is that the pulsar is constantly firing the envelope, and so you can see this orange light here indicates whether or not the envelope, the gate, is currently open or closed. It's permanently open because it's constantly being fired. I slow it down, and eventually the envelope generator will get to a stage where it's actually able to finish its journey and be not open all the time. So there is a relationship between these gates that we need to be aware of, and it's all about whether things are open or closed. If you try to think of each module in terms of control voltages, they're not musical devices in their own right. The envelope generator has no concept about music. It's just generating a control voltage, an amount of signal over a period of time specified by certain constraints. And when this pulsar is sending all of these signals into the envelope saying open, 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 the envelope just says, okay, calm down. And so it basically holds itself in an open state all the time. What that results in is us hearing a constant tone, because the shape of the envelope is never having an opportunity to have any effect on the sound. And if you think about it in terms of signals going in, signals coming out, how big is the signal going in, how big is the signal going out, then we get to kind of have a little bit more of an understanding of why, when we have an envelope that's supposed to be drawing a shape, we don't hear a shape. Well, it's because another part of the circuit is kind of overriding that default behavior. I won't explicitly deal with the sequencer trigger select, other than to say it's similar to the pulsar, but it's going to come from this fella over here, the sequencer, and we'll deal with that in a separate video. We are now up and running with a simple oscillator and envelope generator. We can do an awful lot with modular synths, but there's a lot more to go. In the next video, we'll deal with the modulation oscillator, which is this section here. This is the second of the synth's oscillators, and it differs in quite a significant respect from the complex oscillator, so there's a lot to talk about there. If you make sure to subscribe and hit notifications, then you won't miss the next episode. Hope to see you then. Thanks a lot for watching.